Well, they are two very different programs. However, training's not different. Training is training no matter what the subject matter is. But in order to be able to teach blood banks as well as retention, the biggest thing I've done is to get a good understanding of how to do both of those programs. Basically learn how to make the calls for both blood banks and know how to make calls for retention. It's impossible to teach anything unless you have a really firm understanding of the basics and the ability then to explain that to somebody. When I was hired into the company, I learned blood banks right away. It wasn't until later when I was asked to do retention, I had to put myself through retention training. I had to have someone teach me, and then I had to spend the time on the phones, enough time on the phones to learn how to really make the phone calls. Once I had accomplished that, then I was ready to figure out how to train it to somebody. But really, it comes down to learning the material well enough so that you can then teach it to somebody else. That's a good question too, and a fairly tough one. I think the biggest difference between a Blood Bank CME and a Retention CME is a Blood Bank CME is typically the type of person who, before they even come here, is already fairly customer service oriented. There's somebody who wants to help others, who wants to please others, and that's typically the type of personality that makes a good Blood Bank CME. On the other hand, for retention, somebody who's going to make a good fit for a retention CME is somebody who is basically a salesman. Somebody who can understand the product, who can learn the product, but also knows how to explain the product to another person to convince them that there's real value in it for them. So I think it's customer service based personality as opposed to kind of a sales personality. Well, it can be difficult, and as the company grows, it gets more and more difficult because we're doing more and more training. I think one of the biggest ways that our department deals with that is we have a good fit, or we have good people in that department. I am not the most organized person in the world, and that does require a tremendous amount of organization to be able to keep all those different wheels moving at the same time, if you will. So a lot of the people that I've been able to get to work with us in that department are people who are basically a complement to what I can do. So I'm not great at organization, so I've looked for a few people who are really good at organization. I'm really good with kind of dealing with new groups of people and doing things on the fly and just kind of keeping the ball rolling. So that's my strength. So what I do is then try to find people who can complement that strengths, who have the strengths that I don't have, to meet that organizational need that it takes to really keep all those different moving parts